This episode is brought to you by Vittles. Vittles Espresso, roasting fair trade and organic coffee in small batches from around the world in the backwoods of Corinth, Vermont, and serving it up at 2 locations here in Bradford. Are you on the go and headed to work? Or passing through? Maybe you just don't want to get out of your car in the cold weather? Vittles is the premier drive-up espresso stand in Vermont, located at 901 Lower Plain in Bradford, next to the pharmacy, open 7 days a week. But maybe you've got a moment to take it easy and the drive-thru isn't your thing, and you want to sit down for your maple latte while you have a breakfast burrito. Maybe you need to pick up a few bags of whole beans or try their new single-served steep coffee packs. Maybe Sunday brunch and some beers with your friends is what you're looking for. Vittles is also located at 142 Main Street in Bradford at Vittles House of Brews, open Wednesday through Sunday. Either way, Vittles has got you covered, whether you're looking for a cup on the go or a place to relax for a bit. For more information, go to vittlesvt.com, new website coming soon, or follow them at Vittles Espresso on Facebook and Instagram. How you doing, bud?
Hey, how you doing, bud?
Not too bad. Hey, welcome.
Welcome to the Full Vermonti podcast.
First ever, episode number 1.
Number uno. Well, we are recording this on New Year's Eve day, the last day of 2021.
Yes, sir.
And, yeah, how do you feel about that?
I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah?
We're going into a new year. I think it's going to be pretty good.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
No.
No?
No, I haven't thought of any.
Well, what if you thought of just one?
Oh, geez. You know, I would like to do some more hiking this year. I didn't really get to do any last year, so.
Yeah.
But that's about it. No,
Okay.
No, nothing too exciting.
Oh, I think hiking's a pretty
No,
good
you're right.
one.
You're right. Yeah, it is. How about you?
Well, I'm only going to eat meat that we raise on the farm for the rest of the year.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say you're just going to be a carnivore.
I'm only going to eat meat for
Because
2022.
January apparently is National Carnivore Month.
Really?
I just learned this. So, yeah, if you're just eating meat all January, you're good to go.
Well, you know, for those who haven't listened before, and why would you? Because this is episode 1. My name is Luke.
And I'm Travis.
I work on a farm here in Corinth, Vermont, where we do raise animals for meat. And, you know, as much as I love a gas station breakfast sandwich, I feel kind of shitty about eating them, especially, you know, raising animals for food. Yeah, it's my intention to only eat meat if I know the farm that it's come from or if we raised it ourselves.
That's a pretty admirable goal, I think. Maybe I should try that with you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it seems difficult, but I think I could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've got plenty of bacon if you need any.
I do, and I saw the turkeys that you guys raised. That would last, I think, a solid month.
So, what are you thinking about the weather out there today?
You know, it kind of sucks. It's late December, and it was raining last night. It was above freezing, and yeah, not great snow conditions. It's kind of lame, actually.
Yeah. Paved roads were fine on my way down the hill to the recording studio.
Plow truck went through this morning.
Yeah, I saw
Roads
the
are
sander.
fine. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. My road was a little slushy.
Okay. Yeah, mine was not.
Oh,
And I live on the back road, so
yeah.
it's all good, man.
Well, you know, we've got a guest today.
We do.
First guest.
First, fellow Corinthian.
Yeah, he lives on the back roads too.
I don't think he does. I think he just has a really long driveway.
He has a really long driveway.
I think he actually lives like exactly halfway between our houses.
It might be exactly halfway.
I'm going to measure.
And once we introduce him, which we haven't yet, I'm dying to know how this guy keeps that long driveway plowed.
I'm sure he will tell us.
Well, these are things to look forward to this hour and to expect from us at the Full Vermonty podcast.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Without further ado, let's introduce our guest,
Brian Carroll.
Brian
Welcome.
Carroll.
Welcome, Brian.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for being our first guest.
Yeah, pleasure.
So what's good with you, Brian? What's good?
What's not? I live in Vermont. I live in a beautiful place with beautiful people. So I know it's coming to the end of a tough year, and hopefully looking forward to a better one going into 2022. And we'll see what happens, but always trying to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
I kind of always just try to be a better person to people around me, and
Well,
give
you're
back
doing a pretty good job at that.
Yeah, get back to the community, and then also, try to tackle more creative projects than I did in the past year, really. I think those are always I always came up with like a list of, I want to do this, I want to record a new album, I want to do this, I want to do that. And now it's just kind of generalized, be a better human, do more creative things.
That's awesome. I can't imagine you doing more stuff than the amount of stuff that you already do.
That's true. From what I know about you, okay, this is what I know about Brian. He's on the board of all sorts of things. He plays music. He builds guitars. He makes movies. He's an artist. Yeah, man. What else can you do?
He's got to keep that driveway plowed somehow.
That's true.
Yeah, and those are just hobbies, I guess. So on top of my day gig.
Well, what do you enjoy doing the most? What are you trying to really tackle, though, this year? You said you want to be more creative. Is it something in particular? What exactly? I mean, what are you really trying to do this year?
Yeah, I think that everything I've done creatively for the past, decade or 15 years, or whatever it's been, I kind of came to this realization last year that it all culminates into this idea of storytelling, whether that's through a song or through a fictional horror short that I came up with, or I just recently launched not recently, in the past year, a mini documentary series called Handmade that seeks to highlight people in our direct area. We have so many people hidden in the hills here that create with their hands, and from woodworkers to leather workers to pottery folks, just people that are doing amazing things that otherwise may not get their stories out there. So that's been kind of my main deal as of late.
Cool. Yeah.
Those have been awesome.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Just I think there's something really special about a creator inviting you into their space and sharing their story and their process with you. It's a really cool opportunity for me, selfishly speaking, but also
Yeah.
I think being able to share that with folks has been something that I've really held to a great standard myself.
Who are some of the people that you have been filming for the documentary series?
Yeah, so far it's been mostly Corinth folks. So Dave Richard, who's a guitar repair guy, luthier in Corinth, who I also play in a band with. His partner, Kathy Chapman, who is a stained glass worker and a painter. Wade Madison, who's a younger guy, like around our age, that he's a leather worker in Corinth as well, who lives like half a mile as the crow flies, probably right in between Travis and myself, his house is. And then just yesterday I released one with Jeff Spiegel, who's a sculptor and a painter and a woodworker. And there's a list a mile long of folks that I want to get together with, but as time allows.
Yeah. Well, do you mind if we steal all of those people as podcast guests?
Go for it.
So you're, other than the music and the film and whatnot, you are also a crafts person, I guess, in the sense that you have built guitars and you do woodworking.
I mean, I've toyed with building guitars.
Okay.
I do some, do my own setups and things like that on my instruments. I'm lucky enough to have friends that my friend Andy built me a guitar, an octave mandolin, and is currently in the process of building me an A-style mandolin. But I do toy around with woodworking, cutting boards, things like that, stuff that's easy to give as gifts for folks. And I have, I'm not what I consider a modest but nice wood shop above my garage.
I was gonna say I feel like Brian might be being a little humble because I have been up to his studio and yeah, he definitely does some cool projects up there.
It's fun. Keeps the idle hands are the devil's playground, as they say.
The devil's playground.
And we are on the Full Vermonti pod terrified of the devil. So
yes. As far as like the artists that you've seen and interviewed so far, has there been one sort of not to play favorites, but has there been one sort of studio or maybe just a medium that you weren't familiar with, or that you just really enjoyed maybe a little bit more? Or
I think Kathy in particular, who is a stained glass artisan, is just because I had no real concept of how all that gets put together, and her taking me through her process and talking about how she, repairs old stained glass in churches, but also creates her own work, was really interesting to me. Because, I gather the concept of leather craft and woodworking at a very minimal level, but that for me was something totally new. So it was really interesting to hear about a process that I had absolutely no concept about.
yeah, that's pretty. I don't know anything about that either. So where does it go from here? What's next, or where do you want to take it?
I think in an ideal world it would, really take off like anything that we pour our hearts into. But I'm just really happy with the the local response that it's gotten so far, sharing with the connecting Bradford community on social media and stuff like that. I'd say just continuing to do it. It'd be nice to double the amount of artisans that I work with in the next year. Not to put a number on anything, but I think that would be something that's feasible, but also nice to get more stuff out into the world.
I can cut this if this is top secret information, but I do know about a pretty ambitious documentary project that you are working on over the course of this year.
Yes, we'll go full circle to the introduction here. So I think that Margaret and Jonathan at Cross Molina, ever since we first moved up here, 5.5 years ago, they've kind of from day one been immediately invited us in as part of their family, and that's such just this feeling that I think a lot of us feel in a small rural town like this, but is really embodied at Cross Molina with all they do, from the farm store to pizza nights and all that kind of thing. It's a gathering place. It's really this family, wonderful community kind of a feel. So I want to do a feature length kind of that follows the farm for a full year of production and working, and put that out and submit it to festivals and things like that, just to kind of be a fly on the wall and how a small local farm that's diversified works.
That's awesome.
Hell yeah, that sounds great.
I can't wait to see how it turns out.
Yeah.
And what about the horror shorts that you're making to kind of keep it in the same, general area, but also very different?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a horror nerd since I was very, very young, probably far too young. And I remember seeing The Shining at a far too young age, and just the cinematography work of John, I think it's John Alcott or James Alcott. How you can take something so horrifying but make it look absolutely gorgeous, and that was this concept that kind of stuck with me over time. And over the course of my younger years, I got more and more into horror movies. And as time progressed, kind of in more contemporary times, I've been a big fan of Robert Eggers' work, and Jaron Blasky, who's the cinematographer on all of his movies. Just the way that they really have an idea and target it, and they craft it in such a beautiful way visually, is just really something that captures me. And so it's partially trying to do that with it, but also just come up with fun little things that that are kind of scary and scare people. And
So I am a horror fan, but I'm not great with directors' names. So you mentioned Eggers, and who was the other name?
so the cinematographer that works with Eggers is Jaron Blaschke. I mean, obviously Kubrick is always a
right.
big
What-
one for folks.
And so, I think that the Kubrick films are pretty. You got 2001,
Visually stunning.
The Shining.
Yeah.
But what films are those other guys that you mentioned? What are they?
So Eggers' first film was called The Witch, which is like it's like, I think it's right up all three of our alleys with like very like New England folklore, and his attention to detail is just unparalleled by anyone I've ever seen. Like down to he's choosing shots because they don't have the budget to get the right shoes for people that are period accurate. So he's shooting from like the ankles up. And I admire that work ethic and that attention to detail and the amount of research that goes into something like that. It's really astounding, I think.
And I love sheep-centric horror. And if you need to borrow any sheep from the farm for any of your next projects, let me know.
Yeah, particularly rowdy goats that might like impale someone or something like that. That would make for a good one. But he also did The Lighthouse, which was with Rob Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, which was very different than The Witch, but also very, like, he puts on these blinders that are like, I'm going to stay so true to this time period in the costuming, and everything is just really, really impressive to me. And now he has another one coming out. It's more of an epic tale called The Northman, but in that same vein that it's like a Nordic folklore tale. That you can tell based on the trailer that there's a much bigger budget, but it's still very, I think, true to his nature of researching things and making sure that everything is very minute, detailed, oriented.
So, bringing it back a little bit, you mentioned you're going to make a documentary about Cross Molina Farm, which is awesome, and the short stories that you do. What is the Vermont film scene like? You said you want to release it, at festivals and stuff, but I've always wondered, is there much of a Vermont film scene? Because it doesn't seem like there's at least much being shot in the state of Vermont. Do you know much about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like production and stuff like that for larger films, it's just like there's not much tax benefit for like a big studio to come here. People will go to Canada if they, and like, not to go back and talk about Eggers over and over and over again, because I probably tend to do that quite frequently, but like he wanted to shoot it in New England, but because of the very specific types of trees and things like that, like the forest was as much of a character as any of the actual humans that were acting in the film. But he ended up having to go to Canada because of tax implications and things like that. So I think that the U.S. in general probably isn't super kind to large productions and things like that. But from a much more small scale, like what I'm doing as an independent, there's definitely people in the nooks and crannies. When we first moved here, my wife and I got kind of guilted into being part of this 48-hour film slam that the Coates Chamber of Commerce put on. And there were people of all ages and backgrounds and experience that took part in that. So I think that there's stuff out there, and some of the local channels, like CATV down in White River Junction, wanted to pick up a couple of the episodes that they had made to syndicate on something on their channel. So there's definitely stuff out there. It's just a matter of finding it. It's not necessarily as prevalent as like a music scene or something like that.
So it's more Vermonty. It's more independent. It's a little more
and hidden.
Okay.
You have to seek it out if you really want to find it.
So to jump back again, and speaking of hidden, thematically, what are some of the things that you're shooting for in your horror shorts?
Honestly, I'm doing most of it myself. Every once in a while, my wife will, like, we started doing shorts before we moved to Vermont. And there's a couple, David F. Sandberg and Loda Loston, who we kind of tried to steal a bit from. They did this short called Lights Out, which then got picked up and became viral, and was made into a Hollywood production that he directed, and now he's a Hollywood director, and he was doing the same thing in his apartment in Sweden, 7 or 8 years ago. So I think it's just, trying to come up with an interesting concept that is also feasible for me to do myself if I'm going to be shooting everything. And so trying to get really crafty with like jump cuts and things like that, and pans and slow zooms or whatever. So I don't know. I think it's really just about creating an atmosphere and a vibe that's kind of this overwhelming sense of dread, because when I watch a horror movie, that's what I'm drawn to. And also being able to do it all with a very, very, very small budget.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a couple of times that you and your wife moved here 5.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What was your impetus for moving to Vermont, and specifically, this area that we're in? And did I use the word impetus correctly?
I think so.
Go with it. Just go with it. Yeah, I'm always curious of how people end up, especially in rural Vermont, in Corinth.
Yeah, so I think that story is kind of a two-part. We were living and working, living just south of Boston in the suburbs and working. I worked in Cambridge, and my wife worked in downtown Boston. And I think this feeling of just being totally anonymous and not really mattering that much in this just this population that was just so big. And we lived in the suburbs where it was like house on postage stamp sized plots and things like that, and it was just like it just wasn't working anymore. We weren't happy. We got just so into this routine that was monotonous and tedious, and it wasn't making us happy anymore. So we knew we wanted to change. Corinth was because we had her family was up here. Tanya Abbey, Tanya has a very interesting story herself that you should probably tap into.
We're definitely planning on having her
She's
as a
on the
future
list.
guest.
Yeah. So when Tanya was 18 and sailing around the world by herself, or with a cat in like a 20-foot sailboat, I don't know if it was actually that small, but a very small sailboat. That's when my wife was born, and Tanya got back, a year and a half, 2 years later, and Tanya's father and my father-in-law were best friends, immigrated to the States together. And I think Tanya probably felt a similar bit of, she was living in Brooklyn at the time, and at some point was like, I need to get out. Their group of families started moving up to Corinth. I think they basically said, we want to move to a small rural area. Pointed a map. Okay, Corinth, that looks good. So my wife had been coming up here ever since she was, knee-high to a grasshopper, or whatever you say. And I had been coming up to visit with her for about 10 years or so, and every time we left, we didn't want to leave, and we would say, all right, we're gonna one day we're just not gonna leave, we're just gonna stay. And I guess about 6 years ago, we drew a line in the sand and said that's it, we're going to. And so in the course of a week, we listed our house on the market. We're looking for places up here, and I was looking for a job opportunity that I could do remote. And all those things lined up in the course of like 4 days, where we had offers on our house. We found a place to live up here, and I got a job offer where I could be full remote based. So we're like, all right, we're not religious, but if there was ever a sign from
Yeah.
whatever, this is it.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah, and I don't think we're ever going to turn back. What we found was such a special community and just amazing people, and an area that's looking for progress, looking to become better, while also retaining what makes this place so charming, like the farmland and things like that.
Did you have any preconceived notions about Vermont, or specifically this Corinth Bradford area, before you moved here?
I mean, the community aspect was always a big piece, because we would come and we would go to like the Corinth Coffee House, and we would see, I mean, just knowing the population at that time, I think we had a little bit of hesitance, because we never saw anyone that was remotely close to our age.
Right.
I think that was probably our only hesitance, but both of us are, we're kind of homebodies as it is, and it didn't really bother us. It was something we noticed. I think Vermont in general, I always thought was very progressive, and something that I've surprised me is, living in Orange County, just how red it is comparatively to blue. But I think what's different is that whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, it seems like people here are able to put that aside and do things for the benefit of the community. I think particularly like with the Northeast Slopes, you have people that are all over that kind of political spectrum. You might have somebody that has a Black Lives Matter sticker on the back of their car right next to someone that has a Trump sticker on the back of their car, and parked at the slopes, but they're both there just so their kids can get outdoors and enjoy skiing. And people are able to put that aside in this area. But that was something interesting that I noticed about being in a rural town, I guess.
Did you feel welcomed when you joined this community, when you moved to this area?
Yeah, and I think for us, which we were really lucky about, was we already had an established community here through folks like Tanya and Fritz. If you know Fritz, he is very welcoming. And then more auxiliary people like Jonathan and Margaret at Cross Molina, or meeting both of you guys, because when there's 30 somethings around, you automatically get pushed towards them. They say you have to be friends.
Yeah. For the record, we are all friends in real life as well.
Indeed.
So.
But yeah, I think that's may not necessarily be why we moved here totally, but it's why we want to stay here, is the community aspect of it.
Hell yeah.
And being able to give back in any way that we can, and just feeling like we're helping that community thrive rather than wither away.
And you are helping the community quite a bit, because you are not only on the board here at the Space on Main where we're recording this, but you're also on the board of the Northeast Slopes, which you just mentioned. How did you get roped into that? I didn't even mean for that to happen.
I think we were looking for opportunities, and as someone who grew up snowboarding, mostly in New Hampshire, I didn't really come to Vermont very often as a kid. It was like, oh, this is very cool. And then I think anyone that goes there and sees the fact that the rope is driven by like a mid-70s Dodge Dart with a slant 6 engine is like, oh, cool, this is great. But the first time you volunteer, seeing the impact of a kid that's up to your waist going on the T-bar for the first time and falling down once, falling down twice, and then the third time getting up and being able to make it to the top of the hill. I don't know, it just gives you the warm and fuzzies a little bit. So it started out as something like, oh, this is cool. Maybe I'll get a few runs in when I volunteer. And then quickly, I had a skill set that seemed to be beneficial to, as far as technicality is concerned, with like web development and photography and videography, because no one else on the board really had that. I also can't, go into the engine of the cat and fix it if there's some issue. So there's people that have all sorts of skill sets.
Yeah.
And just being a part of that and feeling appreciated, I think is a big part of it as well.
Have you been out this year?
I have not.
Northeast Slopes or otherwise?
No, I have not. I didn't really snowboard at all last year. Strange year, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I only went out once last year to Northeast Slopes towards the tail end of the season, and it was
really.
I mean, it was like the last day they were open, and I just so happened to have my snowboard in my truck, and I'm like, oh, I'll go out, and it was just
slush.
It was slush. I hope they have a good season, though. I really do.
Why are the hamburgers there so goddamn good?
The secret ingredient is love.
Oh, did you see that the Slopes is going to be in Yankee magazine?
I did know that, yeah.
Yeah. Did you have anything to do with that?
I did not know.
Okay.
I think it just kind of... Wade does a lot when it comes to, telling the story and things like that. He's just always available to talk about the slopes. And I think that's he has such a, he grew up there. His father who had a big part to do with it. But I think we're all there for that same reason. Just it's a labor of love and wanting to keep something that's very unique and very special going.
I think Wade is is the most Corinth person that there has ever been and ever will be. I really
I
think we
agree.
should have a mayor of Corinth, and it should always be Wade Pearson. So I hope we can interview him sometime soon. We might need a few hours.
Yeah, that
Well,
might
no,
be longer
That
than
might
that.
be like a 4-hour podcast.
I'm prepared for it.
Multi-part.
Wade's the best.
So we haven't really talked a lot about you as a musician yet. So you are a member of the band Turnip Truck.
Yes. I
You
am.
also play and record music as a solo artist.
I did that for many years. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Please elaborate.
If you want.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I like most young teenage boys, I guess, grew up listening to what my dad was listening to, like the Dead and the band and Dylan and Neil Young and things like that. And my dad got me really hooked on Stevie Ray Vaughan and Hendrix as well. So I always had this idea in my head of like I want to just rail on a Stratocaster and be this blues legend or whatever. And then as I started to kind of come into my own, it was like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and yeah. So I asked my parents at the time. I said, "Oh, like I really want to play guitar," and they said, "Well, if you want to, I was from a pretty blue collar kind of a family. Both my parents had 2 jobs when I was growing up, and they weren't going to go out and buy me a guitar. So they said, get a paper route and make money, and so that's what I did, and bought myself a guitar, and played in a bunch of bands in high school and things like that. And then when I went to college, I got big into like John Hartford, and that kind of led me down the path of bluegrass music. So I found it a different way, like through John Hartford, and then I kind of got into like Nickel Creek with Chris Thiele, who's a really astoundingly wonderful mandolinist. And then I kind of found my way to traditional through that route, traditional bluegrass, like Bill Monroe, through that route. So then when I moved up here, after being in Boston and trying to make it as a solo singer-songwriter, I found that to be kind of boring, so I wanted to be in a band again. And Dave, who I mentioned earlier, who has been on the Handmade documentary.
Also on our list of people to interview.
Yes, he would be a good one. Another one you might have to set aside 4 hours for. But he said, "Oh yeah, I'm in this band. Would you want to just come and jam one night?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I went over to his shop, and he plays guitar. There was another guitar player, Rudy, mandolin player, so I wasn't going to play mandolin, and a fiddle player named Andy. And so Dave had a bass sitting in the corner. And I said, "Oh, I'll just play bass then." Okay, cool. And so I got kind of roped into playing bass after the first jam, and we've kind of been together ever since. But I'm also playing in a couple of duo projects. I really love playing in a duo because I think it's not quite the same as playing by yourself because there's a bit more going on, but there's also nowhere to hide, and each person in that brings something really special to the playing experience. So that's been a lot of fun. This past year, I've been writing a lot of instrumental tunes, and I'm currently in the process of recording those for an album, which has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, if you are open to it, maybe you can email me some MP3s that we can throw into this recording.
Splice on it, yeah.
So, you mentioned growing up. I think probably like a lot of people, you grow up listening to what your dad listens to or whatever, and you listen to a lot of hard rock, it sounds like. Maybe Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan. There's a lot of bluegrass in Vermont.
I know it's a touchy subject for you.
I have nothing against bluegrass. I love bluegrass.
It's oversaturated,
But
perhaps.
do you have any ambition or intention of going more rock and roll or electric or whatever you want to call it? Is that something that you might be doing or want to do?
Yeah, so I'm currently working in a duo with a younger fellow named Mark Birds. Mark he is in it. He doesn't just like play music. He completely digests it when he gets into a certain type of music or a certain player or something like that. He also builds guitars for a company called Froggy Bottom, and he has become very much immersed in that. And he's already surpassed me pretty far in terms of like his interest in his abilities, and he's only 21 years old. But we've started introducing into the duo that we're working together on electric guitar. So just like adding more of a kind of a country element to things, and playing some like bluesy numbers and stuff like that too. But keeping it primarily acoustic, but getting out of the more bluegrassy realm, because I think there is like you had mentioned, like Vermont is very oversaturated, and I think New England in general has become a bit oversaturated with bluegrass in the popularity surge that it's seen, or even just like roots Americana, whatever you want to call it.
Why do you think that is?
I think it all started with when "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" came out, and Dave Rawlings and Gillian Welsh kind of soared to a popularity there. Berklee College of Music in Boston also has a really, really great American Roots program that kind of has churned out a ton of friends of mine, but also just really great players. So I think that also has had a lot to do with it. There's also I think there's a bunch of bluegrass oriented festivals in New England, like Freshgrass. I wouldn't say I'm on too many boards to say I'm on the board, but I'm the artist videographer for a Southern Vermont festival called Green Mountain Bluegrass and Roots. And I think the name is a bit deceiving because they do have bluegrass acts play, but there's also like country acts and there's some rock elements to it as well and indie kind of stuff. So
That's awesome.
How do you feel about fish?
when I did more drugs, I was a lot more into fish. I listen back now and I'm like, when you actually listen to the words of the songs, you're kind of like, oh, but I can't fault that because it was such a big part of my upbringing and my found love for music, and like I think the ability to jam and improvise came from listening to Fish and the Dead and things like that. So it's a part of my musical history. I don't really listen to Fish nowadays. I have a lot of appreciation for them, and like Mike Gordon has a side project with Leo Kottke, and like they're all really hugely talented musicians. I do think like a 15-minute jam is maybe a bit excessive.
So
I know nothing about fish, so I just had to ask.
shout out to the also incredible Vermont-based podcast Brave Little State. They just did an episode about fish. Have you heard it?
I have not, no.
I recommend it to both of you guys as a person who's not a fish fan, but really not anti-fish. I just didn't know anything about them or have a entry point into their music, and their 30-40 minute episode on fish really kind of made it make a little bit more sense to me. Why it's such a big thing. Well, Brian, we're getting a little close on time here, so I do have just a couple questions to ask you before we go into some segments and play some games, if that sounds all right with you.
It sounds great.
So, back on the topic of music, your band Turnip Truck played my wedding to my wife in 2019, is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
And I do believe that sorry to put you on blast, put you on the spot here, but I do believe we requested that you not play Wagon Wheel. Do you recall?
I don't recall.
So you're saying you don't recall me specifically requesting you not to play Wagon Wheel?
I don't recall that, no.
Do you recall playing Wagon Wheel at my wedding?
I actually don't. I was also drinking a lot at the time.
I think everyone was hammered. So.
Yeah. Well, to my recollection, you guys, I think we're badgered by my aunt and uncle to play Wagon Wheel. And I don't fault you for it. I'm just having a good time.
It's a catchy tune.
Yeah.
It's gotten a stigma, but hey.
It is what it is. And now for the question that's on everybody's mind. How do you plow that driveway?
The guy who plows our driveway, Mr. Bill Ricker, lives right across the street.
Hell yeah.
And he's a very kind individual and always makes sure that he checks in with us first before he's off for the day and sends one of his guys over. So we're very lucky. Again, keep going back to community. Yeah. We just, people taking care of each other. Neighbors.
Shout out to Bill Ricker.
Yeah.
I guess one piggyback question. You said another shout out to community. How do you feel about the term Flatlander?
I understand it. And I think that people that don't live, particularly like transplants like myself, they might be like, oh, they're the native Vermonters are calling you some bad thing, even if you live here for 20 years or whatever. But no, I get it. I don't take offense to it.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
From one Flatlander to another, yeah, I agree. Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it's not like they're trying to push us out. And like, especially now, I think that we're, not to go off on a tangent, but we're living in a time where like people with a lot of dough from out of state are just snatching up places left and right, without any real intention of giving back to this community. And maybe there's a different word that's slightly more severe than Flatlander for folks like that. But yeah, I embrace it.
Well, maybe we'll come up with one during the run of this show.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out what the opposite of that is, like a native Vermonter. I've heard woodchuck, but I don't know if that's true or not.
I haven't heard it either.
You
I'm
haven't
not
heard
sure.
it either? Okay, well, I'll have to ask around.
Well, your family goes back like 3,000 years in Vermont, so
Roughly speaking.
yeah. That makes you like a fossilized woodchuck,
That's a good question. We should just call it fossilized woodchuck. Yeah, although I wasn't born here, so I don't know. I'm going to have to ask like some authorities on whether I'm technically a Vermonter or not.
Well, do you want to play some games?
Sure. Are they difficult games?
You tell me. Well,
Oh no, there's trivia.
Breaking out the Farmer's Almanac.
this is a segment. This is going to be the first iteration of this segment. I don't know what we're going to call it yet, but what I have with me is the Old Farmer's Almanac 2022 edition, and I'm going to talk about a couple of the things that are coming up for us in the month of January 2022 that we are fast approaching. So for those of you that may or may not be familiar with the Farmer's Almanac, it is
Basically a guide on how to live your life.
the best way,
The best. The best.
guided by the stars and knowledge of our ancestors
The
and
tides, it
the
says.
tides, and it's been around since 1792, and it's right, I think, 110% of the time. So for January, we're looking at an average temperature of 19 degrees. We are looking for about 3 to 12. No, okay. Forget you heard that, guys, because this is how we're going to make this a game.
There's no game element to this.
So, well, no, there's no game element to this, guys, and I'm editing most of this out. But
For the record, I have no clue what's going on with this segment.
for the first couple of days of January, it's going to be sunny and it's going to be cold. My favorite section of the Farmer's Almanac, we have a chart of the best days to do certain activities in the month of January. So I'm just going to be focusing on the first week of January since that's what we're going into. This chart is based on the moon sign and shows the best days each month for certain activities. So for the first week of January, if you were looking to end any projects, January 1st is a good day to end projects.
Okay.
Do either of you guys have any projects that you think you can feasibly end on January 1st?
I think so.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Ah!
It's a little short notice.
All right. Well, January 3rd is a great day to start a project, according to the Farmer's Almanac.
Quick turnaround.
Quick turnaround there. Any projects you see yourself potentially starting on January 3rd?
I think Brian has a lot of projects going
Yes,
on.
there's a list that I could consult.
January 4th or 5th is going to be the best time of the month to perm your hair, according to the 2022 Farmer's Almanac. So,
Brian does have a great head of hair.
yeah, and
I'm not sure it's long enough to perm.
but if you were looking to straighten your hair, January 1st would be the day to do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Noted.
Now, January 4th and 5th are going to be the best days this month to castrate animals.
What days?
January 4th and 5th
4th and 5th.
are gonna-
Castration. Got
are
it.
the best days for castration of animals in the coming month.
Have you ever castrated an animal?
I haven't.
It's not fun.
What type of animals have you castrated?
Sheep.
Okay.
It's terrible. You feel so bad.
Is it just like a rubber band?
You have to hold them on the ground, spread their legs open, and rubber band around their balls. It's terrible.
Have you, Brian, ever castrated any animals?
I can't say that I've personally ever castrated any animals.
You gotta work
Well,
on a farm, man.
if you want to start, January 4th or 5th. And then finally, the best fishing days coming up for January 2nd to the 17th. Those are
For
going to
ice
be
fishing?
ice fishing.
Nice.
Yeah. Do you guys ever do any ice fishing?
Yeah, bud.
Yeah, bud.
I haven't in a long time, but I am hoping to get out quite a bit this year.
No ice fishing.
No way. Would you?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll set it up.
Okay.
Let's do it.
You
Well-
guys all want to go ice fishing?
Hell yeah, bud.
Hell yeah.
That's the end of my almanac segment.
Thanks, Luke. We'll work that out. Yeah. We'll work out this whole podcast thing. All right, Brian. So this, I think we're going to call the So You Think You're a Vermonter section. Just random questions. We've got a little trivia at the end.
I'm gonna do horrible on this.
Nah, it's just some questions. Number 1. What is your favorite winter vegetable?
I'd have to say just a potato. I'm pretty plain. Potato's versatile.
Any type of potato in particular? Russet, fingerling?
I like a russet. I'm not a big fingerling guy. No.
Fair enough.
I like some meat to my potato.
You know, russets, they're good. They're a good roasting potato. Not my favorite mashed potato.
Are you a cook? You like to cook, Brian?
Yeah, I was a sous chef actually for 6 years at a country club.
No shit. The guy does everything. Second question. I think we kind of went over this, but maybe whether a local guest or a big name Vermonter, who would you like to listen to us interview? Once we hash this out, of course.
Ooh. I think Carl will be a good one. Carl
That's
Demerel.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
we're-
Carl will be a good one. He's very, everything from chainsaws to the State House. He's kind of got it all covered.
Number 3. What is the most Vermont thing you have ever seen?
Oh, God.
What encapsulates Vermont? Is this image in your mind or something you have done or seen?
That was Vermont AF.
If I ever saw like a red barn wrapped in a plaid shirt filled with Cabot cheese or something, maybe that would be it. But I don't
think
know.
I've seen that once.
I don't know. I think the on 25 the Taking Back Vermont barn kind of
Yes.
kind of always triggers it for me, I guess.
I remember when that happened.
Triggers is
talk-
really a good.
We'll talk about that another time. I'll take back Vermont. 4. What is your favorite cheese?
I'm a plain Jane. I just like a Cabot cheddar. I also like the habanero, but I'm a cheddar guy.
Regular cheddar, not sharp, extra sharp,
Sharp.
seriously sharp.
Vermont sharp.
Vermont sharp.
Yeah.
Got it.
Seriously Sharp's the red and black.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, me too, bud.
I just got some vintage cloth bound the other day.
Oh.
Shit's good, man. Number 5. This concerns your house. Wood, pellets, or propane?
Wood.
Good for you. Next question. The first thing that comes to your mind when I say Bernie Sanders?
Glasses.
Do you have a favorite tree or flora in particular?
Gotta be a maple.
Gotta be. I think everyone should probably say sugar maple.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about Kahlberg maple.
Yeah.
Tuesday. We'll save it for
Well-
Tuesday.
Yeah.
So you think you're a Vermonter. Couple trivia questions for you.
So you think you're a Vermonter?
So you think you're a Vermonter.
Do.
All right, Brian. I know, like most people, when we think of Vermont, we think of reptiles. The official state reptile is what?
Is it like a wood frog?
I believe that would be an amphibian.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. A newt. No, a newt's probably an amphibian too.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. A garter snake.
It is a painted turtle.
Really?
Yes, painted turtle. The two state fossils include the woolly mammoth, of course,
Whale.
and what other sea creature?
A whale.
It is a whale. Do you know what kind of whale?
I did not know a blue whale.
A beluga whale.
Beluga, really?
Yes.
Baby or adult?
I'm not sure, to tell you the truth.
Vermont used to be a deep blue sea. Where he swam so wild and he swam so free.
Deep blue sea. He ate me. Established on January 15th, 1777, the Vermont Republic declared independence from what three authorities? Or ruling areas, I guess you could say.
Would it be Britain be one?
You could say that. British Quebec would be one,
British
yes.
Quebec. I have no idea. I don't know my Vermont history.
I'll give you a hint. The town of Corinth that we all reside in has a charter from these other two places.
No.
New Hampshire and New York.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Well, that's it. I think you got one.
1 out of 3 on So You Think You're a Vermont.
I think that's close enough. I think we can consider you a Vermonter.
33.3%.
Good enough.
So we got a journal opinion over here.
We do. It wasn't very good. I didn't see any good articles. Because I don't want to talk about the pandemic. Yeah, I don't know what you want to go into on this.
Do we have anything to talk about in there? We
Not-
can just wrap it up.
I'm not really into high school sports. Bunch of stuff on wearing masks.
Well, maybe just play
wanna
with
talk
that
about
newspaper a little bit more for the ASMR
I
crowd.
will. That will be the ASMR portion of it. Ice rink at Elizabeth Park is solid enough to skate on. Do you skate?
I played hockey for most of my young life, yeah.
Have you been over there?
I have not.
I guess they put up a new pavilion or
They
something.
did, yeah.
It's a cute park.
Yeah.
Parks and Rec is doing a lot of good stuff. My wife and I are actually working with them to put in a dog park as well. So
Are you a board member?
we're on a task force. We're not okay, tread lightly there.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for being our inaugural guest.
Thanks for having me, guys. This has been fun.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to promote or link to or
Shout out?
Like and subscribe to the Full Vermonty podcast. I don't know. I'd say just keep an eye out for the handmade stuff. It's kind of like my big passion project at this point in time. I think it's probably dovetails nicely with what you guys are doing here. So, talking about Vermont things and highlighting Vermont people.
Where can people find that? On the gram, on Facebook, what
Yeah,
website? What do you got?
They're on YouTube right now under Gatos Filmworks. That's kind of where all the horror shorts and this work is.
Two Cats?
Dos
Cats,
Gatos Filmworks on
YouTube.
Got it.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, awesome, bud.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you guys.
I enjoyed your story and talking about horror movies and stuff, or listening to you talk about it.
I enjoy talking about it, so.
You're a gem of a dude.
As are you guys.
Bye.
We'll figure that one out. Yeah, wait. For more information or to ask us or our guests any questions or about sponsoring a show, make sure to email us at thefullvermontypod@gmail.com. Follow us at thefullvermonty on Instagram and check out our website, thefullvermonty.com. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you are listening to this show.